There's financial freedom, there's emotional freedom, there's mental freedom, there's sexual freedom, there's a lot of versions of freedom. And I am a freedom guy, by the way. That's kind of how I'm wired.
David, what's on your calendar today?
Today, hang out with you. You're on my calendar. Nothing else, no other hard landscape today. I have a lot of other things. As soon as we stop doing what we're doing, I have a lot of other things to choose from that I could do, but otherwise, this is it.
How free would you rate yourself from 1 to 10?
Well, you're going to have to back up a little bit and tell me what you mean by free.
That would be my next question. What's your definition of freedom?
The ability to make choices with limited constraints and follow my intuitive hunches about what to do. I'd rate myself at probably 9.5.
He said 9, I said 10. We're both good. And most of us and our community, we would rate ourselves much lower. How can we get there?
A very simple solution to that, and everybody's involved in that solution already. Get older.
Because just get
older. No, come on. Well, get older with an appropriate sort of focus about your focus and what to do with it. Yeah. So I'm 73, and I probably feel freer now than I maybe ever have in a way. And part of it's, there's financial freedom, there's emotional freedom, there's mental freedom, there's sexual freedom, there's a lot of versions of freedom. And I am a freedom guy, by the way. That's kind of how I'm wired. Don't fence me in, so whatever. That's a lot of how I came up with the GTD process to begin with. So I wasn't held hostage by my own either negative thinking or incomplete thinking, about things that I am engaged with. So that's how I kind of came up with this. But yeah, freedom takes a lot of forms.
When I do my GTD, which is basically I load off what has my attention, I find myself being in a victim mode a lot. Like, especially when I'm tired or I was on planes that week, they say, oh my God, I have to do this, I have to do this, I have to do this. And this mental program says, I have to. And I'm wondering, how do you deal with it to find another stance towards it?
Have to can take a lot of forms. The negative emotion of it is, oh God, I have to, but I shouldn't have to, but now I have to, oh damn. Or I have to because the building is on fire and I need to get out of here. I have to survive. There's nothing wrong with that. That's absolutely, an appropriate driver, right? So have to, maybe, it really all has to come down to what are your agreements with yourself? What are your values? What are your standards? What matters to you? If being alive matters to you, then obviously getting out of a burning building is going to create some have-tos. That's not a bad thing. That's a necessary thing to get you driven and to pump your adrenaline and to get you out of the building, right? So there's nothing wrong with that. So when you say you find yourself in victim mode, I would say you might want to rethink whether that's I have to because I've made a wrong commitment, or wow, here's another opportunity to improve my life and to move the needle on things I'm committed to. And that may be just your own internal comfort zone about whether you like to beat yourself up or not. It could very well be, God, look at all the options of things I could do today that are going to move forward a whole lot of things. Thank you, God, that I have, an experience and a life that I have all these options.
Is it about tracking my values or my priorities or my purpose? What is it that gives me direction?
All that. What matters to you? Come on, Simon. What really matters to you? You don't care where you live as long as what's true. You don't care what kind of work you do as long as what's true. You don't care who you work with or who you live with as long as what's true. So those are kind of ultimate drivers of the things that really matter to us. And you don't want to be off purpose of that, otherwise that'll grab your attention. I'm married to the wrong person. I'm living in the wrong city. I'm doing the wrong work. So paying attention to those will start to perhaps clarify for you what some of your core values really are. And then managing that Yeah, well, great. What's the outcome you're after? What would you like to have instead? And what's the next action? So GTD can be then applied to all of those things. But GTD doesn't focus you on your priorities. It focuses you on what's real right now. So you don't set priority, you have them. So all I have to do is just get you to really unload what's got your attention, and you'll see what your values are. Just by simply, what are those things that you've already committed to? I need cat food. Why? I have a cat. Why do you have a cat? Well, I love pets. Well, why do you love pets? Well, they kind of open your heart when you come home, and it's fun to do that. So, well, why does opening your heart and having fun matter to you? Well, I'm a better person. My spouse, appreciates me a lot more when I'm in a better mood. It allows me to, right. So anything you're doing, ultimately can track back up to whatever your core values are. But see, GTD, what's perhaps unique about this is that we start with where you are, not with where you should be.
You said what's real. So the opposite would be what?
What's made up, what's fantasy, what's not real, what's dishonest. I'm really happy, and you're not? That's dishonest. That's not real. What's real is, I like to say I'm happy because I don't like to address the fact that I feel really depressed right now and I'm just trying to show up really good. Well, that's honest. So a lot of it's about, back in the old, well, what's truth? Who knows what the ultimate truth of the universe is? I mean, I'd like to figure that out. But there's the relative truth. What's really true for you right now? How are you feeling? What's going on? How are you feeling about this interview? How's it going? So that's what, it's a relative truth. It just means I'm authentic. I think authenticity is really a core and key element to both success. You deal with a lot of entrepreneurs and startups and people like that, and people often ask me in those environments, they say, David, what key advice would you have if I'm if I'm doing a pitch or if I'm trying to be, successful with what I do? I just say, be authentic. Be who you are. I saw that on your website. You said something about that. And I said, yeah, we went through a transition ourselves where a lot of my early image was I was a big corporate guy with a tie and kind of OCD, and at least people had that image of me because the first edition of Getting Things Done was really targeted to the fast-track professional environment because that was my experience with working with people in that environment, and those were the hungriest people, for what I was saying. So I kind of dressed myself up in the costume for that. But at a certain point, I went, wait a minute, that's kind of inauthentic because when people would meet me, they go, God, you're nothing like what I thought you were going to be having read your book. And we said, well, okay, there's a delta here between who we really are, how I really am, what we really want to communicate to people, and how it's showing up out there in the world. It was appropriate for the time. But that's one of the reasons I wrote the new edition to Getting Things Done, was to loosen it up, lighten it up a lot, and really be more, no tie on, more of my sort of spontaneous hangout, be myself kind of person.
What we do with corporations about strategies that are more and more real and authentic and respect-based and connecting is very much inspired by the GTD process that I experienced the last 5 weeks since 5 years since I read your book. And there are some moments where I unload and then I have to clarify, why do I commit? Do I commit? Why? Do I commit or not? Why not? And it's always a mini sequence of checking my values and checking the walk and the talk. And especially when I do the weekly review, which is not every week, but it's
me neither.
recurring.
So don't.
When do you do your
worry.
weekly review?
As soon as I realize I have to, and usually that's pretty much every 7 or 10 days. But it's a tricky habit to build.
Yeah, and it allows me, together with meditation, to become a little bit more true to myself because there's nobody seeing my lists, so I can write the real stuff, and then I allow myself to accept more and more of that. What is your take on acceptance?
Oh, it's the first key of spirit as far as I'm concerned. In my spiritual work that I've been doing consciously for 50 years, that's absolutely the first thing. Anything you resist, you're stuck with. It's an old self-development, aphorism. So the acceptance doesn't mean you have to like it. It just means you better not assume that it shouldn't be here. It is what it is. Right? You got to accept the weather out there. I mean, it's kind of rainy and windy out there right now. If you said, I don't like this, it shouldn't be this way, good luck. You're not going to put on the right gear, right? Somebody said there's no bad weather, there's bad clothes, right? So you just have to accept the weather, and then you strategize around it. So, you're involved in strategy for companies. The big problem is companies that complain about stuff or are afraid about stuff, as opposed to accepting that's the truth and that's a possibility. And now we need to strategize around that. Anybody in their company that doesn't assume and expect that senior management politics is going to be a key driver to a lot of stuff, if you try to resist that, complain about it, be a victim of it, you're not going to strategize around it. As opposed to, that's probably going to happen. Whose game do I need to play right now to get what I really want? So understanding and accepting what the reality is allows you to then be appropriately strategic, personally, professionally, spiritually, any other way. So acceptance is a whole lot of it. And it's, I think, a lot of why, a lot of people probably resist the getting things done in the GTD processes, because it's going to force you to accept all the commitments you've made with yourself. And most people haven't a clue how many things they would, could, should, ought to, might want to, oh yeah, I need to, or whatever. Because you can only remember one at a time, and most people have just, filed this huge amount of inventory of those kinds of things internally, and have created this sense of angst, angst, in your language, that they don't know where the source of it is. But the source is basically a lot of commitments that you haven't accepted, or haven't agreed or acknowledged, or been willing to say, yes, I agreed to do that. Now am I really going to do that or not? And that's a lot of what the GTD process does, and invites people and challenges people to do, is get real, accepting what has your attention. Should I get divorced? What am I going to do about this tooth problem that I just came up with? What am I going to do about hiring a VP of marketing, or should I get a CTO first?
How would you handle this question? Should I get divorced? Would you do a project? How would you handle it?
Yeah, there are no problems, there are only projects, right? So what's the project? What would my desired outcome be? Get clarity with me and my life partner about how we need to, manage our relationship. That's a project.
Goes on your project list?
Goes on a project list. What's the next action? Oh God, I should talk to him or her, or I need to talk to a counselor, or I need to surf the web and see who, God knows. Maybe I just need to sit down and draft ideas, pros and cons. But it's all outcome and action. The problem is a lot of people get their attention wrapped around some pretty subtle but some pretty profound stuff, but then they don't sit down and walk themselves through the clarification process. If you've done the second level of the getting things done, training, which is projects and priorities, which gets you to focus on, wait a minute, what are all those things that really have your attention? Come on, let's get honest, get real, and get some acceptance that that's going on. See, a lot of people don't want to think about these until they have a solution, as opposed to, wait a minute, here's the thing, my outcome is to have a solution. I don't have to have the solution to identify that that's something I want. And then what's the next thing I need to do to start to move forward getting a solution? And boy, just that change for anybody listening or watching this would be huge and transformational.